when I started out, the most that I would do is I would draw these, like, I actually wish that I hadn't used dry erase, those like mats you can get, I would use those and I would draw out the scenario using a dry erase marker, and that was all that I used. That with some miniatures, and that was sort of how I ran stuff at my table. And then I started dabbling a little bit with some more physical stuff. The nice part about putting things uh, on the table that isn't just flat is that it seems to spark players' imagination. So if I put a tree on the table, somebody's going to climb that tree during the encounter. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, seeing that physical thing is going to inspire somebody differently. So I like it for that aspect. I like how it sort of sells a location immediately. I like being able to take different pieces that I've crafted and kind of put them together, and it's really fun. I've found it to be, you know, probably the most like rewarding artistic outlet that I've ever had. I really like how, like, the back and forth of, like, I have an idea for a game at the table, and then I can build something that makes it easier to run that thing, and now I have built something that I can use forever to run that thing. Like, that feedback loop for me is really encouraging. So at this point, I do it probably more for myself even than I do for the players, because it's my favorite way to run. Now, it's not the only way that I run. I'll use digital maps. I'll use theater of the mind. Sometimes I'll just draw something out or just put some basic stuff on the table to represent. I'm not like, exclusively running these like intense terrain scenes, but I do like them. I like using them. So if you have like a village with house models and the players walk, how does that work? So I tend to, like, sometimes I'll use, the tricky thing about terrain is that if you try to represent everything, you can sort of become paralyzed, and you'll never be able to run anything. It's actually for me a lot like world building. World building for my games is great. I enjoy it, but I limit myself quite a bit in doing it, because if it's not something I could put in front of my players, if it's not something that's going to make the game better, it's really just for me, right? So I try not to let world building, like, one of the worst things, that I hear people say is like, oh, as soon as I get this stuff built, I can run my game again. Or, hey, as soon as I write out the entire history of my world, I can run a game. Both of these things, world building and terrain, that can really, really get in the way of running the game. So the easiest way to do it, and what I suggest to people when they're just getting started and trying to build stuff for their tables, is like, pick a boss fight, pick a cool encounter that's likely to happen. We all know which ones those are going to be in our games, and paint a nasty monster up, and build a couple little scatter things to make that feel special. That's a lot more achievable than, eventually, if you build city streets and you build houses and you build stuff and you have a big enough space, eventually maybe you could represent a town or a small town or a city block or something like that. But most of the time, if I'm going to reference a town, I'm just giving players like a physical, like a printout of a map. I do like to personalize those, like with what their players would know specifically, only they know about, if it's like a starting town or something like that. But I think representing too much on the table can actually be really, really difficult, and actually probably doesn't matter all that much. Like, it gets a big wow factor, but the reality is, like, you don't need it. And trying to accomplish that can sometimes be more limiting, right? Where it's like, well, wait, I really need a seventh, but I don't have a seventh building to put on the table, so I guess I can't have that. It's like, wait, that's a problem, right? Like, that, you don't want to limit yourself unnecessarily, if you can help it. So, yeah, focusing on encounters, I think, is a good way to do it. Or a reference point, right? Like, if I'm running a session that takes place entirely inside of a mansion, I have a mansion here on the shelf behind me. I may just have that on the table. I might not even open it up to be playable. I might just say, like, that's where you guys are, because seeing that location is going to get people thinking, like, ooh, so I could, like, climb up to this balcony in the back, or I could, look, we need to have a fight on that rooftop, or maybe I need to come in underground. I can get into the cellar. It's just going to give people something to be creative with, and that's to me, that's the best way to use terrain anyway.